Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining me again. This is the greatest access tutorial ever. I'm your host, Jeremy. Yes, I have my coffee, even though it is almost 7:30 p.m. today. It is New Year's Eve. I hope you're having a great new year. Here's to 2025 and new things. So today's episode is 3.1, which is access subforms and slash subreports. Now, this is a special type of control in access, and this is where the power really starts to come into play. Now, the difficulty for this is beginner slash intermediate because it starts to get a little complex here. And if you haven't looked at the prior episodes for the what I call the main quest, which is how to learn how to build your own database, we are nearing one of the last ones. I will probably update this. This will also be on the playlist. Now, again, you may notice something here. Area 2 is talking about forms, so why is a subform area 3? Because this is a control that goes on a form. And you'll see that's something that actually confuses new access database developers is the fact that this is a subform, or subforms are not really forms. So let's go to our database here, and I will show you an example of this. Here we have a form. This is an unbound parent form with a child subform. So this subform is called child, and you can see it's blank. There is nothing in here. Now, in Access, to create one of these, what you would do is in the form design, you would go to form design, in designer mode. The icon is right here. It looks like a form, right? You would click it, you would drag it. That will give you what's called a subform. Now, I have named the subform, which is a control. It's just called child. And here's what the form looks like. Now, what you're able to do what you're able to do with this form is, or this subform rather, this control, I really dislike the name subform. It should be called maybe an item frame or sub item because you can do more than just forms in here. So first I will show you, so you'll notice this is an unbound form, so it's kind of like a blank web page. Here's the subform. So this is the form, the blue background, here's a subform in it. Now what I've done is I've done just a little bit of coding in here to show you what you're able to do. So if I click this sheet, I have another form in the database that is of the car makes. We've been building our kind of fake car database. And you'll notice that this form also has subforms. So notice how they look very different. So this is a datasheet mode form. Matter of fact, I'll show it right here. It is form datasheet. The subform in it is linked to, so that this is the car make. Any models under it will show as a subrow. So this right here is a subform for a datasheet form being shown in another subform. So things can get nested very quickly. If you've ever seen the movie Inception, very similar to that. So things can get kind of wild. And this is why it's really important to understand this thoroughly, know how your database is designed so you can make these properly. And we'll go through a couple of examples. So here I've clicked the button and this subform then is given a source object of that other form I made. Now, remember, if you remember data sheets, they're very limited in formatting. You can't do anything. What if I try to do a multiform? Oh, look, I can do a multiform. You may remember this from an earlier episode. We were talking about color lists. This is a multiform or a multi-item form or a continuous form. Now you will notice there is no subform for this form. And if I try to add one, you cannot in this view. So unlike this, where I can do the pluses and have a subform, in datasheet view, when I'm in a multiform or continuous item, I cannot do that. But this thing called a subform will hold more than just forms. So here is just a little report I used on one of my episodes. I can show a report within this frame. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, reports can, once we get into reports, they can display data in much more complex fashion than a form can. It's really hard to explain right now, and we'll go into further detail when we get into reports. But they can display things very complex. And what you can do with a report, most people think access reports are for printing, and mostly they are. But you can have a report show on the screen and have it interact. You can interact with the report just like a form. There are some differences. It's much slower, and There are some other caveats, but you can still do that. So I can show this complex report like it's kind of like a form. I can also show a table in this subform. That's why I don't like the fact that this control is called a subform. So this is the table inventory. So this, I am looking directly at the table, which looks like a datasheet view. And basically it is. Access uses datasheet view for most of the time when you look at a table. But this is the raw access to the table. Now, why would I want this? I would never want this for an end user of the database. However, as an administrator, I could code something here to where if I want to quickly jump to a table without having to navigate this way, let's say perhaps I give myself a combo box and I select the table and I go boop, I open it, it would open here. Not only can you do raw tables in a subform control, you can also look at query results in a subform control. So this is as if I ran query one. So let's open query one. Those are the results of query one. I am showing query one inside of what's called a subform control. Sorry about that. Had to cough a little bit. Now, how do we make these? Well, let's go to the datasheet example first. So I'm going to pick a table. Again, you have to know what your table relationships look like and what are parents and what are children, one to many, etc. I'm going to pick a table car makes. I'm going to create more forms, data sheet. So we're going to go to data sheet because we're going to do the one with the little pluses next to it first. Okay, so now we have table car makes. Actually, it names the form table car makes because that's what it's bound to, so horrible name. So we're going to hit save. We're going to hit form. We're going to name this form data sheet 2 because I already have a data sheet. Now we're going to go to design mode. Now it doesn't matter what your items look like when you have a data sheet form. Now what I'm going to do, sorry, I'm trying to resize this. I'm not even going to remove the arrangement because I don't care. Now, I am in the design for this datasheet form. I am just going to take what I know is related data, and I know this is kind of horrible. I should have actually let's do that real quick. So let's rename datasheet to, let's rename this form car makes. Okay. Now let's do car model, create more datasheet, save form car models. Let's do it the right way. Okay. So I'm going to go to car models, which is basically car makes, which is the parent item. I'm going to go to design. I'm going to then drag car models into it. Now, normally you will get this wizard sometimes. I don't know why it didn't come up this time. It may already know. Oh, yeah, it already knew. So sometimes you will get a wizard asking you to link the data. If you do not, that's because you have gone to your relationships and you've linked them before, maybe with a lookup wizard or something, or you've manually made those links, you'll get a wizard. It's okay if you hit none on the wizard. I'll show you how to do it manually. So remember, if you remember the design of our prior episodes, we had table car makes. It has a one-to-many relationship with car models. So for every one make, for instance, Ford, Chevrolet, it can have many models, but a model only has one car make. So that's how they're linked. The ID from car makes is related to the foreign key make ID in car models. And you can see here, if I highlight not the form, so don't click the little dot that shows the form, you want the item holding the form, which is the subform. That's why I don't like the name subform. It should be like a frame, an object frame or something, an item frame. So this thing, it says section type form subreport. Let's name this. Let's rename this child. And we can get rid of this label because it's unnecessary. Okay, now. So this is a subform. Now, if we go to data, the data tab, you will see over here, and let me zoom in really quick. Okay, the source object. So what is this subform holding? It is holding form car models. And then we have these two interesting fields here. link master fields, link child fields. Now, it's unfortunate this is named linked master fields. It should read link parent fields. But it's talking about the master form, or the form holding the subform. So what are we going to link? Remember, the subform is holding car models, and so we know which is the child, basically. So we know FK make ID in that form is related to ID in this form, which is car make. So if I click this and click the little dots, it gives you, you can link multiple fields at once. If your relations are like that, in this particular instance, we know that the parent field, it's called master field, it should be called parent field of ID, is linked to the child field of FK make ID. That's how they're related. And so when we look at this, let's go and make the font larger so you can actually see it. There we go. We have the little pluses again. So Chevrolet is now going to show me all models that belong to Chevrolet. Ford. Now we can also change the font of the subform. So let's do something like that. We can change the background of the subform. So let's say the back color is this. And now we have makes with subform models. Now, if you were to say mess up, let's say you have this child and you do not link these. So we're going to delete the master and child, or parent and child fields. And I'm looking at this. Because I have them unlinked, it's going to give me every model under each one, because there is no relation. It's doing no filtering. It's just giving you everything. So remember, when you do a subform like this, you have to link with the master and child. So we'll go again. And it already knows this because, again, I've set up those relations when I was building the table. So it already knows that ID is linked to FK make ID. But sometimes you won't get this. And you can still build a manual link if the data is properly organized. So that's how you do datasheet subforms, just like that. Now, let's go with another type of form. So remember, we cannot do continuous forms. So for instance, if I try to do that, so let's go to table car makes, we're going to create a multiple item or a continuous form. And again, it looks very nasty, but remember, this is the one that we can make look really pretty. So let's do this. Okay, whatever. Close enough. Now, if I go in design mode here and make this wider, and I try to drag in, let's go with form car models. It's going to give me a warning. You cannot do this. It's going to give you an error. So it's going to force you into datasheet mode or just not show the form. So you cannot do with continuous forms. However, you can do it with a single item. So let's go. Remember, we don't have to remake the form. We can just go to the Format tab. Default. Oh, it changed it to single form. All right, great. Okay, cool. Now it changed it because it saw that error. Remember, before this was a continuous form, but it went ahead and just changed it to single form. Okay, now that we're in single form, we can do form car models. Now let's check the data. It linked it already. So now we're looking at Chevrolet, and here are all the models of the cars. And if we navigate through, very similar to how the data sheet works, except it's one at a time because these are bound. This is a bound form looking at table car makes bound to those keys. Now, you can also do unbound forms, but you have to do a little bit of code behind it. So let's do, where were we? We were here. So remember I said before, this form is unbound. So I cannot link the master and child fields from this subform to this form, because this form has no data. It has no bound data to it. So I can't do that. So what I have to do is manually do that through code. So each time I click one of these buttons, I'm running just a little bit of code to tell this subform what to carry. And I'll show you the code. It's very simple. So I just put an event, I put onClick. So let's look through this. We'll kind of walk through this just in case you're new to VBA or you forgot. So anytime we're in form code and we use the keyword me, it's talking about the form that you're coding. So right now you can see we are coding form 31 underscore subforms. It says it here and it's highlighted here. So, okay, we're talking about the form. So we know, and let me I'm going to comment these out. I'm going to comment these out so you can see the key. So we know if I use the keyword me, now it's going to come up with a bunch of things, but if I start typing, the name of the subform is child. Now, one of the properties, watch the episode on properties if you haven't, of a child is the source object. Now, if we do some research, or maybe later I'll do a new episode on the Office object model, we know that source object, we can set the source object is expecting a string value. So we can say, we can set this. Now remember, this button was the data sheet button. So we can set the source object to form data sheet. And then we also set a label caption to the source object, which is going to read that. So now let's look again. If I show data sheet, this little caption changes to the source object, which is form data sheet, and then this frame here, the source object has been set to form data sheet. Form data sheet looks like this. Same thing, except now it's in a frame. So you can nest these. You can go crazy with these, although I wouldn't go too far because it gets hard to keep up in code. But you can nest these. You can have a subform that contains a subform that contains a subform, etc., as long as they're compatible types. Now, there is a caveat to this. If you put a form in a subform, all you have to do is the source object equals and then the name of the form in quotes, because it's expecting a string. However, if you do anything else, you have to prefix it with the type of thing. So for instance, if we want to show a table in the subform, we say the source object is, quote, table dot table inventory, the name of the form, end quote. Same thing with a query. If we're going to make that source object a query, it's query dot query1. Same thing for report dot, and then the name of the report. So you have to prefix a non-form item with the type of item it is, query, table, or report. And that is pretty much it. So these are very, very powerful. You're able to do some very cool things with subforms. I use subforms on practically every database because as you start to relate data, you'll start to pair these things up. So anyway, that is it for today's episode. I hope this finds you well. Again, if you find this channel useful, please consider subscribing, like the video, and if you want to be notified about future episodes, click the bell notification at the top. Thanks so much. Have a great new year, and I'll see you soon.